first off, good afternoon. Clearly the last week and a half or so, we were trying to work on a lot of different things, and really never got to a point where we felt like we could get a deal done, and that's very clear as the deadline has come and gone. One of the things we did do was we moved Jedd Gyorko. Part of that was because of the roster crunch here. Ultimately, when he comes off his rehab assignment, we were just afraid that we wouldn't have a spot. And so rather than just think about this as just a pure release, we decided to see if anybody had interest. Dodgers did. And then we put in some cap space to get a young prospect. And so, that was what we were able to do. Explore starting pitching was really sort of the first and foremost of what we were looking for. And then also looked at the relief market. But, from people's standpoints, we just weren't matching up. And, unfortunately, we didn't get what we hoped to do, but we still really like our team. We're still very excited about our team, and we do think we're getting healthy at the right time, and hopefully this club can continue playing the way it is, and it'll be good enough.
Can you share what were the obstacles in getting the starter that you wanted? What were the demands, or what was the?
Well, I think the big thing for us was, first off, not a lot of the players that maybe were being talked about being moved were moved. And I think that put this market a little upside down. But then when you look at we didn't want to trade from our current major league team, and so it basically was prospects only or minor league players. And when you think about what was being asked or what was being discussed, it just wasn't enough to get the deals done.
You feel the rotation and potential depth of the rotation is good enough to get you through to this?
Well, I mean, obviously over the last 3 months, we've had struggles with our rotation, and that's why we were trying to find an upgrade for that. But just because we identify someone that we think can help us doesn't mean they're going to do a deal with us. And ultimately, we did not want to go into this trading deadline feeling that we were going to trade a Dylan Carlson or a Gorman, and especially for a rental. And so, we were trying to find deals that would either avoid doing that or something that might have had a longer lasting appeal to the Cardinals in the out years.
Was there a time where or a potential deal that you felt was kind of within reach, at least at one point?
I mean, there were multiple times we thought we were getting close to things, but start really getting to the details, and we just never got to a point where clearly we could get it done.
Oh, you mentioned that not a lot of starting pitching, but a few did. Is it a reflection a little bit on your system being down, given that some of you guys graduated to this point? You created some. How would you say? Was it just you couldn't come up with the pieces, or maybe they didn't view those pieces as appealing as you thought they would?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, right? Some of the guys that were moved we weren't like players in those types of deals because of the prospect ask. Then there were some that that we just weren't that excited about as well. So it was somewhat a little bit of both on that. But when we look at some of the guys that weren't moved, those are some of the places we were focused on.
Well, if fans read it as complacency or a lack of urgency, what would you say to that?
I can understand why fans would feel that way or people, but in fairness, for the last week we've been working tirelessly to try to do something, and it's always when you have deadlines and you don't come up with something, people aren't happy. But I can't come up with an excuse that's going to make that go away. But I hope people realize that we're still excited about our club. We still think we can win, and where we stand, it's tough because new deadlines change how you think about things. There's no August trades now, and so we were really trying to push for something right away and just didn't get there.
What prevented you from making a deal that you wanted to make?
I would say mostly the ask on the prospect side, and starting with like a Dylan Carlson. We weren't going to trade Carlson just for 10 starts or 11 starts, right? So that became something that, when your system isn't that deep, you get asked and hit on that a lot.
Well, the Cubs and Brewers both made additions, the Braves made additions, the Nationals made additions. I know you all measure yourselves against yourselves, but do you have lingering concerns that the teams that you're in this race with made those additions and you all did not?
Not really. I think teams do what they think they need to do, but from a timing standpoint, we're playing pretty well right now, and we still have a handful of people on the DL. Still very optimistic about where this club is headed, and when you're looking at specifically what we were trying to do, maybe versus what others were, we didn't see the value or the type of talent that we thought could really make a difference out there that we could get done.
Obviously, he hasn't pitched this year, but how does Tony Cingrani factor into future plans?
I mean, really, that was to help offset some of the Gyorko dollars, and so they have their own math to do, and we have ours. So that's how that worked out.
What do you tell the team, assuming that many of the guys wanted a jolt, wanted an addition, because all the other teams got new players too?
What do I tell them? I tell them that we tried really hard to do something, and that we have faith in them, and I also would tell our minor league system that we believe in them, and that's why we didn't want to trade them.
Michael, you were on the phone a lot trying to. Did you sense at some point early on that maybe the ask was going to be too much to bring back one of the starters that you guys had interest in?
I think we talked a little bit about it yesterday, that the asks were very high, and the question was when would the dam break? And as Mo already mentioned, there were a decent number of starting pitchers that were widely assumed to be available and widely assumed to be traded this trade deadline who ended up not moving, and that as that became more real, it became more obvious that maybe these prices are just what they are.
So, Gersh, who is the fifth starter now in the Cardinals rotation? Who will take those starts as we go on from now?
Michael Wacha is our fifth starter.
So do you think because the finality of this trade deadline, because there's no more waiver deals, that it took maybe too much time for the market to set what the cost for some of these guys? Do you think that was a factor in some of the names that people thought were on the move didn't move?
I don't think that had too much of a factor. I mean, I think most of the players most of these starting pitchers that were thought to be on the market who didn't move would not have moved in an August trade either. These are quality players who, if they had to go through a waiver process, it's unlikely they would have gotten to a playoff team who was able to make a trade for them, right? So I don't think my impression of the trade deadline is not that it made a huge difference on the big players. There probably were more small trades this time than there usually were, like backup players and bench bats and minor relief pitchers because of August, but not on the big guys.
And the guys that you were targeting, they were there any guys that you didn't know probably weren't going to move? I mean, did you have intel on what guys the teams were looking to move and not move?
I think the way I described it is that every team was willing to move players at the right price, and the question was whether they would get the price that they felt like they needed, and a lot of them didn't apparently.
Gersh, where are the innings going to come from? A contender team who wants to win the division needs to get innings from a rotation. This is a rotation that has left the bullpen exposed more often than not, just in recent weeks. Where are the innings coming from?
So, we feel comfortable that our front four guys have pitched quite well actually over the last couple of months. We did a little bit of a tough stretch here, but we expect Wacha to step into the fifth spot and pitch like he has in the past. We still have Ponce available for innings if and when we need them, and we feel good about our bullpen. Our bullpen has been very effective and it's been pretty deep. So, we're as Mo said, we're comfortable with the team that we have and that we're in a position to win the division. Obviously, we were looking for upgrades if we could get them. I mean, we were aware that upgrades could help, but it just didn't work out.
Have you put yourself in a position where a lot has to go right for this to end in October, as opposed to a lot can go wrong?
Every year, a lot has to go right.
Okay.
I mean, you can make a trade for someone like we did one time with De La Rosa, and he gets hurt within a week and a half. So you never know. But I do think from an internal standpoint, you also hope that people can step it up. And, Michael Wacha is going to get a second shot at this to try to run with it.
When you was right at this point after the deadline, with less consideration of what other teams might want from your prospects? Does that open up options as far as your 40-man goes, whether it's Woodford, whether it's Rosarena, guys that you might not take another look at now, who might have more opportunity to arrest?
Well, I think the answer is of course. We still have roster constraints, but from a 40-man spot, when you think about like Junior Fernandez, how he's throwing, we felt like rather than just try to flip someone to flip it, we have some internal options that we think can help us down the stretch.
Well, is the climate change overall? Like, it used to be easier to pull off a blockbuster, and now controllable years and things are coming into play. Is it less fun?
I think the big feels like it at the moment. As we sit here, but I do think like years ago you used to see a lot of deals that were just about moving money, and that you don't see as much anymore. And so, from a trade standpoint, it's not always looking at trying to find that veteran that teams that are looking to go in a different direction are looking to move. And so that limits you on what you can and cannot chase. But, for us, it was pretty specific what we were trying to do, and we just weren't able to get able to cross the finish line.
What do you say to the fans who see you in first place right now and are very pleased with the team and understand that they have missed the playoffs 3 years in a row and don't really, in their eyes, they don't care about 2022. They want to make the playoffs. They missed it for 3 years in a row. What do you say to them after what happened today?
Well, again, I mean, in all fairness to that question or statement, you're not going to do an irrational deal just to say we did one, right? I can sense sort of the frustration in the air here that, oh, you guys didn't do anything. But what if we had done something and just been bad? And so then we read about that too. So, the object of this, or the goal of this, is to try to make successful and smart deals. And we just didn't feel we were at a point where we could do that. And we weren't just going to do it to just say we did it.
Sort of asked you this a year ago. How do you evaluate what constitutes irrationality? I guess. When do you get to the point where maybe you consider whether or not your line for what's irrational is matching up with the market and whether that needs to slide?
Well, we match what the market's doing. I mean, that's how we understand the balance of how to make decisions. But when you talk about not everybody's created equally. In other words, some teams have much more prospect depth than others. Some teams have much more major league depth than others. Some teams are looking to restructure their roster. When you think about this trading deadline, what happened over the last 30 or 40 days, some teams that were clearly selling ended up not. And so I just think, like, you also look at teams that went out and acquired some of the bigger names in the starting pitching market. They might not even be contending this year. So it was a little bit upside down, but I think when we talk about rationality or what's irrational is how we think about the value system. But we certainly recognize that the trade market has a different value set than the free agent market.
Did you target some folks who didn't get moved? Does that help satisfy you a little bit, like they just didn't get moved at all? Like, is it worse to miss out on a guy who gets moved?
I mean, look, the way to think about this is, like, we weren't so focused just to say we did a deal, right? You have to, like, sort of separate that. And we would rather not make a dumb deal than just say we did a deal. And you spend 7 straight days in a room trying to work on something, you tend to want to see some success or something come out of it. And so there's a high level of frustration for even us that work up there. But we answer to people. We have to be responsible for the decisions that come out of that, and we just didn't feel like we could get there.
Is there a carb timeline? Do you have a loose idea of that?
So off today, report to Memphis tomorrow. I would imagine probably give it reevaluate by Sunday.
So you've mentioned Carlson and Gorman a lot. Just kind of what sort of timeline roughly, or kind of in the next couple of years, what can fans look to for them, since obviously you guys are very high on them?
We are very high on them, but trying to put a timeline on when you would see someone in the big leagues has been unfair. But think about what Dylan Carlson's doing at age 20 in the Texas League. It wouldn't be hard to connect the dots to say you'll see him pretty soon. But it's really also just about, like, we weren't just going to give them up again to say we did a deal, and it had to be for the right person, and we never got there.
Are you looking at Ozuna getting back?
Well, I imagine if you asked him rather quickly. Positive reports last night on how he looked, playing the field tonight. I mean, really the most important thing is just to make sure he's got his legs and that his hand feels okay. But it wouldn't shock me to see something by the end of the week.
Girsch,
Maybe weekend.
Hopefully, maybe expect to be here tomorrow at this point.
We believe he is on a plane to St. Louis as we speak, and there's a decent chance we still activate him for tonight. It'll be a late decision, but
Girsch, the Gyorko move, just a chance for him to go somewhere else, or?
yeah, as Mo discussed, we just looking at our roster, our 25-man roster, there just wasn't really a place for Jedd to be activated once he was ready, and so we explored some opportunities, found a way to get some salary relief and to acquire a young player, and felt like it was best for everybody involved.
Is that a credit to Tommy Edman, just how well he has played that created some of that crunch?
And Munoz.
And
Yeah, I think both of them have shown that there's no reason for them to go anywhere.
The past three trade deadlines before this one, also not one where we've been super active, but some moves, but not addition moves. And each of those years ended with you guys out of the playoffs. Is that an unfair connection to make?
I would say it's a bit premature. A lot of baseball to be played. Again, we still are excited about our club. But we'll see. I hope not.
You asked for the team to prove what it deserved, and it went out and won maybe a bunch of games. Is there, I don't know if you have standings for GM, where would this go as far as where you got your, is it lost to that goal or something?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's TBD. I feel like, again, like the moment you do a deal, we all have opinions of it, right? And then over time, those opinions change. So it's going to be no different than today. You can look back on this and you can say, Mo, I told you so. Or you can look back and be like, no, you were right. But who knows?
Well, you don't know because somebody has moved to
No, but the point is, it's if we make the playoffs, it's not going to look like this was a horrible day.
Well, were you initially on the starters looking for guys with control of 19?
That was not mandatory.
Okay, so you were always talking to both rentals and.
Yes.
And were the prices very different in terms of those two things because of that?
Yes.
But obviously neither one was.
But I think overall the pitching market was tight, especially in the starting part, and so we just didn't get to a point where we were comfortable with it, where we could make them comfortable.